Hey, folks, Tim Miller here with Lionheart, and I wanted to come on real quickly. For many of you that follow the channel, you know that we try to provide information as best we can that will help you stay safe. We analyze videos, we talk about it through a trained perspective, and then we talk about recommendations for maybe how you can become safer with all that's going on. And we would all agree a lot's going on. Well, at Lakewood Church on Sunday, an awful lot went on. And I want to preface this by saying many of you know my background as a Marine or a police officer or a Secret Service agent. But when I retired from the feds, I became the director of security at one of the largest churches in Florida, a mega church with multiple locations. And I will tell you that it was daunting trying to take the experience that I'd had in the past and apply it in a church security type of environment because everything's different. One thing I did learn, though, that you still have a duty, albeit in a different mindset and with a different heart and attitude, to keep people safe. And many of the locations that I ever saw were large locations with, up to 15, 20, 25,000 people. And much like Lakewood, we were faced with the challenge of integrating security teams, private security volunteers, and law enforcement officers. And what we saw on Sunday, quite frankly, what was very disturbing for all of us. And I'm going to get into the details here in a minute, but let's kind of start with the story as it unfolded.
We're going to turn now to new information about that deadly shooting at Joel Osteen's mega church in Houston. We're seeing new video showing the chaos Sunday as the shots rang out. Police say the shooter was a 36-year-old woman with a history of mental illness who had attended the church in the past year. Omar Villafranca has the latest.
Investigators are sifting through chilling new videos like this, showing panicked churchgoers in one of the country's largest houses of worship. With her son by her side, police say 36-year-old Genesee Moreno walked into the megachurch carrying an AR-style rifle. When she was confronted by off-duty officers working security, she opened fire.
They were repetitive, boom, 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 boom.
The sound sent the congregation scrambling as security returned fire, killing the shooter.
If it weren't for them, the number of casualties and victims would have been much higher. There is no doubt.
The shooter's son appeared to be caught in the crossfire.
Folks, the shooter's son dies in the arms of his mom. The police are put in an incredibly horrible position. She's killed. The child is likely not going to survive. And it came out of the blue. Well, let me be clear, folks, that oftentimes these events come out of the blue. And here we go again with a severely mentally ill lady acting out, it costing her life. And quite frankly, it's just a blessing that it didn't cost others their life. And so what we're going to do is what we always do on this channel. We're going to take a look at the incident. We're going to look at the before. We're going to look at the during. And we're going to look at the after. And we're going to see if we can learn some things from it. And folks, let me just say this. When I was a Marine, after every operation we did what was called an after action review, an AAR. And why did we do that? We wanted to learn from the incident so that we could be better, we could be stronger. When I was a police officer, the same thing. There were always investigations, there were reviews, and then they came up with findings, and you were able to learn from those findings. And we always had kind of a motto amongst us that I was outside of, Washington, D.C., where it was very violent. We always had a motto that if we lost our life, we wanted others to learn from the experience. And then, of course, the same in the Secret Service. Why do I say that? This is in no way critical of anybody doing what they do, but this is hopefully something that can benefit all of us if we can take the lessons learned and apply them. And I don't care if you're part of a church of 50 or like this one or whatever, 40,000. The principles are the same, folks. They're always the same. It's just how you apply them. And so let's talk about the conduct of what happened here. And we're going to talk about the before. What do we know about the before? Well, we know we have a lady who has attended the church, who has severe mental health issues, to include, according to reports, schizophrenia. Now, for those of you who do not understand schizophrenia, it's a horrible situation where the mind begins to communicate against itself. Sometimes there's multiple personality disorders. Sometimes there are voices. Folks, those are all things that influence people's behavior in a major way. We also know that she had been investigated for potential abuse against her son, which was the child in her arms, I guess, that was shot and is in critical condition. So why do I point this out? It's because you always ask yourself after the incident, what could we have seen before the incident? Well, we know that she had major issues. Her parents expressed concern. There's question out there that she was able to obtain a weapon with that mental health issue. That's problematic. I also wonder how many, or if anyone, on the church staff or part of the church membership was aware of concerning behavior, and was that reported? Because if that was reported, then it's the win. It's the stop before it happens. And remember, let me pause here. I've talked about this before, that in the Secret Service, security is proactive. It's all about putting plans and the rings in place that would thwart an attack, would make it not happen. The win is not to respond and try to mitigate. The win is to stop it from happening. And that's the goal of church security. Now, my law enforcement brothers, they're doing what they did this week. They're responding to an event. They're trying to mitigate it. So just grab the picture, proactive versus reactive. If you're proactive, you have a chance of stopping something, maybe even in the parking lot. So the before, the mental health issues are concerned. But what about the before during the actual attack? Well, one of the things we talk about on this channel regularly, if you're talking about any kind of event security, is the importance of identifying and stopping a threat in the parking lot. And so my question would be simple. Was anybody paying attention to cameras? Was there anybody outside monitoring that parking lot? And so if you're a church of 50, this applies to you too. You need to have somebody, video and or somebody, identifying what's going on in your parking lot. Most every church attack that I'm aware of, that we've looked at, dissected, started in the parking lot. Antioch, you look at New Life Church, the list goes on. It starts in the parking lot. Well, folks, if you're proactive, then you have a chance of stopping the event where it will have minimum impact. So before the event, were there opportunities to stop it? Yes, in the parking lot. The second layer in should have been the doors. Was anybody monitoring the doors? Would it have arose suspicion that this lady's carrying a rifle and a child in a black trench coat walking into the building? Is that another layer of security that could have prevented it? Obviously, in this case, it didn't, because the officers became aware that there was a threat when there was shooting occurring, when they were taking fire. And let me pause here. These folks are heroes. I'm a firearms instructor. As you know, Lionheart, we train firearm skills. I will tell you, a rifle normally always wins against a pistol. In this case, it didn't. I will tell you, had there been one officer, it might have been a different circumstance, but the officers deployed, they returned fire. Unfortunately, the tragedy is they hit the child in the head. Which brings me to another point. Police officers are trained to make those shots under stress. For those that don't have formal training, and for those that are not regularly training their skills, that's problematic, which is why on this channel we try to get you thinking through exactly mentally how would I deal with the situation, but also hoping that it will inspire you to enhance your skills. Folks, there's no substitute for good training when the crisis starts. And so in this case, the officers, they returned fire. They were able to isolate that lady from going any further in. Now, I want you to pause. What would have happened had she made it into that sanctuary where people didn't know what to do and weren't being directed where to go? Folks, that's a problem, and that should be a takeaway for all of us. Your staff, your key volunteer element, they should be trained for crises, not just for active violence, but for fire, for weather emergencies, for medical emergencies, for dealing with mentally ill people. All those things should be trained. And I'm just going to be honest here for a second. Many churches that I consult with across the country, they're very satisfied with what's called presence security. Meaning, well, I have a police officer here, thereby we're safe. Folks, that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, fortunately, we've only seen, in the case of Nashville and even New Life and White Settlement, you see mentally ill people lashing out with violence. And that's a tragedy, don't get me wrong. But folks, it's a different ballgame when you get 2 or 3 folks that have training and they're coming in with a different mindset, a different skill level. I don't mean this disrespectful to our law enforcement brothers, but you're not ready for that. And that's where we need to change the mindset of church security across our nation, because things are changing very quickly. If you want to see where we're going, look at October 7th. Tim, I can't believe you said that. No, that's a fact. In this case, this lady had a variety of issues. But can you imagine if it was a determined, trained team? Would it have been a different situation? So during the incident, we saw some really good things. We saw trained police officers responding, although outgunned. They responded effectively and stopped the threat. Touchdown. Great job, folks. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. But folks, that's not where church security should stop. We have to prepare for the next level of violence. Why do I say that? The Bible says it. Don't blame me. The Bible says in the last days, things will get very dark. And I know on this channel, I try to focus across a lot of different events so that we can prepare and equip. But folks, if you're in church security, please hear me. You need to have a real plan. Your staff needs to have real training. Everything about what's going on now needs to come up a level, because if you don't, you won't be ready. So we talked about the before, we talked about the during. Now let's talk about the after. A lot of folks don't think about or plan for the after. And folks, that's a critical element of church security. Let's think about this for a second. What do you have? You've got a whole congregation of traumatized people. Perhaps some of them were there during the shooting. Perhaps they only heard it, but they're just trying to get out. Now they're traumatized. They don't feel safe at church. And then you have a press conference. And in the press conference, we talk about, I'm glad it didn't happen at the 11 o'clock service. Folks, that's why we have pre-planning, so that we don't make statements like that. Because the reality is, statements like that can send signals. In the Secret Service, we would call it copycats. That's the last thing we want, is for someone to be inspired to do something worse. Folks, just so we're clear, after Columbine, Dylan and Klebold's horrific destruction at Columbine, every school shooter from that point forward wanted to meet or exceed what they had done. And that's the sick mind that many have today. It's an evil mind. But folks, that's why it's so important that the church identifies a spokesman, not the leader, because the leader is going to be traumatized as well. but the spokesman has a pre-planned statement that can address in very empathetic, ministry-focused terms how it's impacted the congregation while not saying things that could cause future damage to the congregation. And I know, folks, that this is sounding like I'm criticizing. I'm not. What I'm telling you is you've got an FBI director, Homeland Security director, over the last 4 months that are saying things like red lights flashing in terms of warning us about the coming wave of violence, specifically terrorism, to the U.S. Folks, I don't know how to say it any differently. I was part of that briefing element, both at the Secretary's Office of Homeland Security and the FBI. I sat between both. I heard the briefings every day, and I got to tell you, I've never heard in my lifetime more clear warnings about the violence that is coming. Now, why do I say that? I say it because I hope and pray that all of us are prepared and trained and ready to act if we're needed. Because that's how we should roll as Americans. We love our freedoms. We love protecting our freedoms. And folks, I'm going to tell you that traditionally soft targets like churches, although it would be a very big stretch to say a place like Lakewood was a soft target. But I will tell you, Lakewood needs to look again at its security plan and say, what can we learn? Because if we can stay humble, if we can look at these methodologies, if we can say, what can we learn? How can we be stronger? What can we do? Then we're all safer. Because the last thing we want is for people to go out and feel safe at church. And let me pause here for a second. If you're guilty of saying presence equals security, then I would submit to you, you may want to rethink that. You may want to put together a very clear emergency response plan. You may want to look at what training is needed for both your security folks, your volunteers, and as importantly, your staff for such a time as this. Folks, I know that this is a heavy video, but I do want to encourage you, please don't listen and go, that's true, that's good. Please do something about it. I talked to a lady earlier today who called us about some of our training that's coming up. And she said, I've just got this feeling that we need to prepare. Well, guess what? Listen to that gut feeling. You need to prepare. I need to prepare. We need to prepare. Because in addition to the spike of mental illness, we're seeing fentanyl deaths, we're seeing drug abuse, we're seeing massive numbers of folks crossing the border that we simply don't know who they are. And folks, these are times which none of us have ever lived through in times past. And so I'm going to challenge you. We talked about the before, things we can learn, especially in church security. Make sure you have clearly defined rings of protection. You're observing what's going on. Make sure you have the ability not only to observe, but to do something about it. You have training to do that. You have de-escalation. You have mental health awareness training. You have the ability to train your teams what to do in an event like what happened at Lakewood. I would remind you, folks, you're more likely to get hit by lightning than to have an active shooter at your church, but you will have someone struggling with mental health issues. You will have people struggling with domestic issues. You will have people that have medical issues. I could go on and on. So please, if you're part of the team, get the training that you need to respond to all of those. Because as I often say on this channel, in the middle of a crisis, you're going to rise or you're going to fall to the level of your training. And so, folks, I hope this is helpful for you. Hey, I need your help, though. I'm told that many on the channel are being unsubscribed, and this is across YouTube. Can you do me a favor, please? Will you like, comment, share, and make sure that notification button is being activated. Because, folks, I know I'm preaching to the choir. My goal, our team's goal, is simply to prepare you with the best information available. I often say we want to have the best information you can get. We want to have the best interaction you can get. And hopefully, we want to leave you with the best inspiration that you can get. Because we don't want it to be church insecurity or people's insecurity. We want it to be church security and people's security and organization security. And so I hope and pray this is helpful to you. Please, again, like, share, subscribe. I know this will benefit you, especially if you're in church security. And I want to address one last thing very quickly. There's some folks out here, and they're saying that the Senate has a bill that's the Militia Act, and it's going to stop church security teams from doing what they do. I would caution you, in an age where people are divided and angry and all fight to the death and all the division and doom and gloom. Let's don't go down that path. Let's get with our congressmen, make sure, let's stay alert and aware, but let's not put information out there that's causing people to hyperventilate and now there is a bill. I would encourage you to read the bill. This is not the first time that the bill has gone forward. Many states have anti-militia laws, and there are a lot of folks that are hyping this up. And the only thing I'm going to say to you is you be the judge. You read the law for yourself, the proposed bill. You can Google it. You can get in contact with your congressperson. You can make sure that your voice is heard, because I don't think it's helpful. I don't think, especially in the Christian community, that it's helpful to start banging alarms and sounding. Well, I know it gets a lot of followers on channels because it goes big. But let me just caution you with humility. Find out for yourself. See what you think. My texting has been blowing up today because there's, I guess a couple people who have sounded the alarm that, church security teams are going to be disbanded, blah, 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 blah. So be wise, pray, and find out for yourself. I'm not saying it can't happen, but I think right now it's a stretch to say that we're going to lose our freedoms. And, I've defended our freedoms overseas as a Marine. I fought my whole life to make sure that, our freedoms are protected. So I would just say to you, just be diligent and wise in these times and check it out for yourself. So I hope this is helpful for you folks. I really do. I hope and pray that you're staying safe. Love your comments. I know there are so many gifted people, talented people. If you're a veteran or a police officer, thank you for your service. I'm unashamed in terms of standing with you. And I hope and pray this is helpful. Like, share, subscribe, comment. I'd love to be able to do more of these in the days ahead, but I need your help. So God bless you. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.